You're unmuted. Doing on a screen here. You there? You just have to speak up, that's all. Here, we'll keep our guests off the screen. How's that? There you go. You get a moment off of the screen.
Wait, is this the updated?
Do you need a paper copy?
If you have one, I'll take it, because then I can flip back to the million emails that we got from this today. Thank you. I keep them all in binder anyway. Okay. All right, everybody, thank you for being here when it was so quickly scheduled. We will try to get better about scheduling in advance. We have some items here on the agenda, but I do just want to let you guys know that I received, so NISP was very consistent since the last meeting. They send updates quarterly. So they had forwarded me following the same type of year that we do, July to June. I don't know, because this last one was July. So I don't know. Maybe they go September to August. So the last one was from March, which we went over briefly at the last meeting, included sexual harassment, student bullying, and harassment complaint form, and the items that are on this agenda, this data privacy that we're going to try to get ready for our first read. Then she sent the third installment. So some of these I think we definitely want to look at. I will forward these emails to the full board, the pieces that we want to, if we decide we want to look at some of these pieces. So this one from July, now I'm confused, Peter, because now this one says, here's our third policy update from March. I don't know. So this one is policy 4765, online course credit, pertaining to Regents diploma credits via online or blended classes. So that's obviously a COVID impacted policy, so we might want to look at that one. Actually, I think, so what they're suggesting essentially from the last two emails that I got from them were, because of coronavirus, they are saying the third and fourth updates say the same thing. They're saying we're taking a different approach. We don't necessarily think that you should add policy, which is consistent with what they told me last time, specific to COVID, but we do think that you should look at some of the language pertaining to specific policies and modify it to apply in either situation. So it suggests a board resolution pertaining to COVID with a statement that temporarily suspends portions of your policies that are inconsistent with your reopening plans, current executive orders, and guidance and directives from state officials. And it essentially just reads, due to the threat to public health caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, while the district is complying with executive orders from the governor and directives from the state departments of health and education, some district policies and administrative regulations will be superseded by these orders and directives. During this time, the district will be operating under those orders and directives, as well as its own required reopening plan. Where any provisions of district policies and administrative regulations conflict with the orders, directives, and reopening plan, they are temporarily suspended to the extent necessary to comply with the orders, directives, and reopening plan. How many times can we say orders, directives, and reopening plan? So it's kind of a safe blanket statement, but I think that we should possibly, after this meeting, schedule a special policy meeting just to address these, because the ones, it includes public participation at board meetings, public use of school facilities, homeschooled students, voting procedures, field trips, school volunteers, student attendance, extracurricular activities, social events, fundraising, intramurals, pieces of your code of conduct, student wellness, student health, student transportation in private vehicles, which would pertain to this BOCES piece of allowing kids to drive to BOCES, meals and refreshments, and it says, those are ones that caveat right off the top would apply to. Then the ones that they're saying, we believe there are some long-term changes to your policies worth considering. Online and distance learning, we suggest adding language about general expectations for attendance for students learning remotely. Student attendance, we suggest adding language addressing students learning remotely, as well as removing barriers for homeless accompanied youth due to lack of parent guardian signatures.
Hold on, so can I interject quickly?
Yeah.
I mean, there's clearly a perfunctory element of these sorts of policies that must be in the code
Right.
of conduct. This isn't policy stuff. This is
Nope,
code
these
of
are
conduct.
each, they refer to the policy numbers that they want you to edit. So what
I
they're,
mean, but why do we have policies on any of this stuff when it's all clearly code of conduct?
it's
stuff?
not all, only their code of conduct is number 5,300. These are all different policies.
I'm gonna forward this off to the board. There you go.
Homeless children. So these just came to me this afternoon. Otherwise I would have had Patty add them, but I think it's important that we make sure that when we're opening in 2 weeks, if we need to address anything of this nature, that becomes our top priority. It was a lot. So again, it's consistent with what they said on the phone to me prior to our last meeting, which is don't add specific COVID policies, because then you have to remember to take them all off the books.
Right.
But modify your language, because it might be true that remote learning might continue. Maybe that's in the future, the way kids with special needs, health needs or something do, or kids that want to take a certain elective and maybe they're taking it in conjunction with, it's not out of the realm of the possibility that some of the things that are coming from this might be positive ways for
Right,
us to
I mean,
reach
I
kids.
guess that's my point though, is like what they're saying is some of these might have bleed over into permanent fixtures in our policy.
Right, and
Well,
some
what
might
you're
be,
saying is we need to do this by when we open. Those two timelines are way.
well, I don't know how long ago they actually sent this.
So
They're saying July is when they sent this.
And I think in July, I would have said yes to this, because we can look them over slowly and say,
Definitely
by the
do
time we
something in
open,
July.
we could peel some of these back.
Isn't it easier to create a couple of really specific policies than to amend dozens of policies?
I think if you look at this statement,
Yeah, I'd like to.
I would say, let's take a look at this and we should schedule, I know everyone is busy, but if it's possible for us to meet, when's our next, I need a calendar, sorry. I'm really in tomorrow's September denial. All right,
Serious? Yeah, I guess it is.
tomorrow's September. Hi, John, how are you?
No, I meant next Thursday, their next meeting.
Oh.
Yeah.
The 10th,
Yeah.
right. And Monday's Labor Day, and I'm going out of town. I'm running far, far away. So I don't know that we can meet before, and we have our board meeting and our board retreat. But I'm thinking the week of school opening, we should probably dedicate a policy meeting to just these items. I was surprised to get both of these today and see, because again, when I specifically asked that 2 weeks ago, I'm like, is there anything? And she did say, we'll have some new information, but these weren't the items that I thought would be coming as new. So I just don't want us to miss the mark on anything. I don't want us to open the doors and have any potential conflicts of,
The way I'm reading this though, do we necessarily have to amend
I know.
language?
I don't know that we have to amend all. I
Or is
think
it
we
just
have to
simply-
take,
Hang on, wait a minute. Or is it simply enough to just add or pass this resolution?
so up to item 17, so item 1 up to sub item 17 is past the resolution. Item 2 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 policies. Those 6, they're recommending an update. So online and distance learning,
Yeah, but I don't know that that's something that,
student attendance, we already are looking at our code of conduct, student health services. And we might already have this language within our policies. I don't know. I haven't looked at I didn't have enough time because I was at work to look at the corresponding numbers. You know what I mean? Because we're not converted to NISPA's numeric system yet.
I guess,
So,
I mean, I know that these are all things that we genuinely need to be looking at, because I don't think we're ever going back to a pre-COVID world, like the box is open, so to speak.
right,
Remote learning has happened in the biggest way as suddenly as it could have ever happened. And so, like, there are gonna be strong advocates with a lot of good reasons why we should continue it for all sorts of different reasons. But let the education professionals do that work. Like, that's not gonna come from us in any functional or good way, where we say, yes, and so remote learning should continue insofar as it checks these boxes and these things. I mean, like, I just don't see our role in that. I'm not.
no, but these are, as you said at the last meeting, these are the recommendations that they've said to however many hundreds of districts that they're serving. I think at the very minimum, I think it's important that in this email where it says COVID reopening plans, board resolution, I think we should highly consider that at our September 10th meeting, we adopt this resolution.
The resolution goes up to 17, no? Or where does it stop and where does it become?
Well, I guess, do we want to include that? It says, from a practical standpoint, you can pass the above resolution and post it to the front page of your policy manual. Another option is to add language to each affected policy. So you can just do this top portion to the end of that small paragraph. And I think that that's at least a perfunctory measure to say, we're thinking about this. We're thinking that as you're delivering instruction and being engaged with students again, that these could become a question. It's literally that one small paragraph that I read.
And the service.
So, and then if we decide that we want to dig further and see, because again, I wouldn't want to include this because these are not any of our policy numbers. I don't even know that we have all of, I think we have most of these
It
policies.
says in there that you could either just adopt that resolution and paste it to the front of your policy
Yep.
manual, or you can go through and do each one in detail. I
Right.
think that the easiest way, and it's just pass the top resolution and then
That's what
deal
I
with things.
Well, especially if this isn't a permanent thing and we do end
Yeah.
up
Right.
going back after
Right.
some miracle,
And-
like, why would you want to undo 30 policies?
And
Plus
I
there's
think you'd want to
several
put a
other
sunset
agenda
on this
items.
the same as we did the other one. I mean, we could go to December 31st. We could go through the 2021 school year. I mean, you know, that's whatever the board is comfortable with. But I think that main paragraph,
I hate to say it, but sometimes I feel like our policy work is kind of like rearranging the deck chairs. Especially right now.
Decorating the house that's on fire.
The orchestra
Yeah,
kept
like,
playing.
I get it, like, we do need to address this, but COVID isn't over, our lessons are not learned yet. Like, we are literally still in the thick of it, and for us to go, yes, we know what policies we need to enact, well, if we do, then we should be all superintendents. Like, and I'm not superintendent material, and I don't want to be.
Nostradamus.
Yeah, Nostradamus might be even better. So, I mean, I get it. And if they're advising us to accept this as a blanket, let's do that. And let's keep thinking critically and in an ongoing fashion rather than saying, well, we wrote the policy. Because I don't want to be in that position right now either way.
Well, and again, I think we're right now in the fact that we've only, you know, been under their policy service since last month. And
Sure.
there was a little bit of acclimation.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they aren't exactly sure that that advice is good for us because if
Right.
they're ankle deep in our policy already, then that's not even close to far enough. So,
As they're auditing it, I imagine they'll suggest some COVID language as well, right? So.
right.
But on the. You sent the third, oh, you didn't copy me on the,
So can we all agree we'll move that forward as a resolution at the next meeting? That's what you would like.
The way to go.
yeah, I think just that simple paragraph is enough, and that'll give us time before the next policy meeting to delve into these other emails. It was a lot, and there's attached to each one are sample policies. I mean, I can't fault them, they're thorough. Like when they send you information, it's all there. So I felt like, I know that was not on the agenda, but this just came to me today and I don't I don't want to overlook that as we're ready to engage with kids.
Sure.
So, okay. So Peter, if you want to cut and paste that and send it off to Patty, we will add that. These are also their policies for, and please tell me I have my highlighted copy. I don't think I do. Oh, I do. So I think what we were hoping to do was move forward with, they're backwards though.
So just as a reminder from the spring on these, the highlighted areas are areas where we cross-reference in the policy other policies, regulations, or what now Ms. was calling exhibits. So I haven't gone through and revised what those numbers might be. So if we're gonna keep our numbering system, or if we're gonna roll over to the new one, I know we had that conversation last time a little bit. As we adopt new NISBA policies, I'm good with either one. So if you look in the first draft policy 8635, you'll see those highlights where it just cross references all the other language we've already been through. The regulation has nothing that should be set to go, nothing's highlighted. And then in the exhibit, for the Parents' Bill of Rights, the highlight is in green because there's two exhibit options. And the one exhibit option is just a blanket statement that covers all technology programs we use. The second exhibit is a specific individual exhibit for every different program that we utilize. So we hadn't decided which one we needed to, but you'll see the highlights on those is basically the green is.
Isn't the problem with that though, that we don't necessarily, like, we're supposed to approve everything a teacher uses, but we can't realistically?
Everything that teachers use in terms of programs are vetted through the BOCES, through the RIC. So all the contracts for these third-party vendors are held through the RIC.
But I mean, what does that mean as far as cloud-based programs?
The companies have to sign off that they're Ed Law 2D compliant with them.
I guess my question is, what if it's not?
What
And that's
is
going to
not?
happen.
What if a teacher program
I mean, the term program is sort of,
application at this point?
yeah, what's the difference between an app or a web-based program? I mean, this is not necessarily something we have to install for kids to use it. If it's on a web browser, it's just a URL that functions as a
Correct.
program. So I mean, I'm not saying there's any, like dodging the system involved, but maybe it's just not, like I'm saying, they might interpret program to mean I put a CD-ROM in the disk tray and I install it, and the BOCES says, cool. That's not a program. An app is a program.
So
As much as that
the difference is, and the teachers are aware of this, is that they can't use programs that require a login or some form of identification in order to utilize.
Right.
So if I'm using a web-based program through a URL, and that web-based program asks a student to use a pseudonym, an emoji of some kind or anything, they've been taught by now that they shouldn't be using that, and they have a list of provided applications that they can use. I gotta say, the vast majority are pretty good about going through, and if they want to do something new, they now ask. Or they'll ask, when is this program I like to use going to be available again? And the answer is as soon as the company signs the Law 2D thing. So that happens few and far between.
And they sign the Law 2D thing with
The RIC.
Well, with the RIC, not NICET?
Correct.
Okay.
There are some that the state works through, the big ones like Google and Microsoft and stuff, had to get involved in that because both companies were unwilling to sign the.
I would prefer, and this is just my singular opinion, I would prefer something that's a little bit more blanket, rather than the onus being on us to go around collecting every policy that's approved by the RIC, because I'm sorry, but going forward, that's a very tumultuous sort of a thing to say that we're going to be on top of everything a kid uses. Because the definition of program, I think, is gone. Like the way that, you know what I mean? Like, oh, Ganza Board bought this program for all the school computers. and they're gonna use this, so it's been through the channels. It's like, no, like a random URL can be a quote program now, I think. I mean, so it's just more of a foundational concept of like how we're protecting ourselves from a legal perspective, I guess. Maybe Joe has more or less thoughts on that. I don't know. More or fewer.
I'm gonna email Peter. She gave us our contact, actually Courtney. So I will email her and ask what their recommendation is on the numbering
Okay.
of how we do that in the interim.
Let's see more detail, I'll probably run
Right?
it, usually.
Well, Mike, just from a management perspective, my concern about this exhibit, they're the same exhibit, just one's a blanket and one is specific. My concern about the specific exhibit is if we go through every vendor we use now for tech programs and apps, that's great for today, but 6 months from now, if one of those vendors goes away and we still have it on the books, and somebody uses it because it's on the books and we didn't get a chance of pulling it out of the exhibit, then we're, now we don't have, we could be in trouble because we got someone on the books that shouldn't. Or you bring in new people that didn't make it to the exhibit piece, you're creating.
Well, I
more
mean, we gotta tell
Well,
a
so
teacher that
this
they
was the one
can't do
that
it until the
we-
board can approve the policy to use the thing that has already been through the RIC in order to do it, like that's madness. That is the most tedious
Well,
bureaucracy.
we haven't talked about exhibits because we haven't used exhibits. I don't know how exhibits work. So, right, the regulations don't need to be board approved. We traditionally have done that with our regulations. I'm gonna guess since an exhibit is below a regulation, it doesn't need board approval, it just needs to be on
I'm actually more okay with that.
can come and go. Well, we haven't really had that conversation as a group about how we want to handle regulations and exhibits.
Well,
Didn't we talk about the numbering last time? Didn't we say we wanted to parallel it with what NISBA's using with other districts, so that's.
yeah, theirs is much more,
That's what I thought.
theirs makes much more sense than what we're currently
I
using.
don't know that they're.
And it will make more sense as you add.
Right.
So they kind of do subsets instead of, oh, the next number available is this, let's just throw it at the
Can
end.
we do both on our system right now? So this could be policy 8635 and underneath it, we can put replaces our CSD policy and whatever numbers it would have been.
I'm sure that we can. I mean, they know that we're in this transition. I'm sure, we're not the only district who's gone
I
through
don't
this, so.
think it matters for them as much as it would for us.
Well,
Keep our
Right,
lives
it's
straight.
for us.
Only though when, if they're updating or providing, us with a template for something that's being updated, I mean, in their system, it's gonna be that number, and in our system, we have to find the coordinating number and just.
Right.
Some
Well,
confusion, I think, so.
When you look at other districts, I feel like Albany City Schools is one that I looked at because they have board docs and I was just looking for districts that use that at first. Like this section down here, where it says adoption date, their sections are pretty big. And it does the thing that we've been talking about doing for a while, which is saying references, other policies, prior policy was this. You could add a note down there that says like what prompted, like when we talked about the animals in the buildings. So when they send us the template, that's not all there, but as your manual moves and progresses. So I'm guessing that every one of ours is going to have a note at the bottom under the adoption date. This will say former RCSD, like for this one, we're moving to 5,500, which is former Board of Education policy 7,100. So technically we're going to be able to, wipe that one out.
And track it back if we need to.
And track it back if we need to, right?
That's on
So,
the line.
Peter, but this one, I mean, we talked about whether or not this one should go through the attorney. Like, this was the one that I think you were gonna, we had specifically said, we know there's a cost associated, the Exhibit E. Because
Right.
this is, every time we could touch this policy, this is what we come back to. Do we use a blanket statement? Or do we have to do one of these for every contractor? And then who keeps track and rescinds it when that contractor is no longer, or that service or product is no longer being used? So I don't know which one is more dangerous from a legal perspective, the umbrella or the specific.
They're taking the middle road, seeing it's whatever we're comfortable with.
Well, that's an answer.
I can run it by them again tomorrow, they're in-house.
That's the legal equivalent of go ask your father.
I don't like details because if you don't follow it to the letters, then, you know, that's when you kind of open yourself up. If you keep that particular policy somewhat general and vague, then
You just say a list of approved vendors or something?
something like that.
I mean, it's their job. It's at that point, I mean, so long as we're using BOCES, it's literally their job to have that information. So we just point people there, like, that's what we use. That's what they said we can use. We pay for the service. Unless we're not even talking about the same thing anymore.
Well, no, so this exhibit is for a third-party contractor. And the note at the top, I swear to God. They were
It's
in
hard to
there.
read because it's in green.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and I'm like,
So
I
what
definitely
they're-
need my glasses. Okay. Some school attorneys may recommend a single generic statement that covers all third-party contractors. Please consult with your school attorney to determine which approach is best. So it says the district can prepare one of these for every third-party contractor that receives student private
If this was
information.
my place of employment, I would be like, no thanks. This is from a simple logistical standpoint. You know what I mean?
Well, I would feel like you must come across the same thing at the hospital. I mean, you input
We would
people's.
reference something generic or reference a list that's kept where it's kept so that it can be found during
Right.
some kind of inspection. But we would keep it-
This one has a generic class paragraph.
So if for our position is either one works, then why would we
Why would we
kill
go with the
ourselves
risky
trying to go with the
option?
detailed one, the more specific one? Just adopt more general and move on.
I know how I will advocate. Subsequently vote.
Simpler is better.
So are we all in agreement on that then?
And I don't think there was any,
Has this hasn't been up for first read yet?
I think we wanted to try and do that next week if we're comfortable with the numbering.
Yep. Well, the numbering is something can always be adjusted in there, right?
Well, it can be just in the second read too.
right, the question comes not so much with, we can keep a running list of what we've passed and what they are. Like, we can keep an Excel spreadsheet in Google Docs under our policy tab to keep track of this. Where I'm more concerned is, on the third sheet of 8635. Like cross-reference 1120 district records, 5500 student records, 8630, like those are not our current policy numbers. So it's the ones that are being cross-referenced
Oh, yeah.
that are not gonna be consistent until
But I can go, if I know that we want to go with the NISBA policy numbers, what I can do is I'll leave those in there.
and then just like parentheses,
So it'll
former
say,
RCSD
it'll say
policy.
cross-reference 1120 district records, and I'll do parentheses RCSD policy number blank. And so we have that.
Or maybe BOCES policy number. Maybe we put,
Well, it's our policy, not BOCES.
so we don't number according to what BOCES had suggested since that was our prior service?
We do, but it's our policy.
It's our policy
number.
number.
Every district has different policies.
Okay,
Not a BOCES one.
okay.
So I'll probably, what I'll do is I'll even put the word NISBA in front of
That would be,
policies. Will be
Okay.
NISBA 1120 student district records parentheses RCSD number.
Or you want to just put former RSD?
That's a good idea.
so I think the next question with this is, with this one, when we adopt 5500, I would move that we eliminate 7100. They said that we don't necessarily have to do that, but literally this paragraph directly below the big blurb of green is exactly what's in 7100. So we should just, to eliminate confusion, just wipe that one off the books.
Sure.
I think it's in here, hold on.
Patty didn't print the regulations.
I have it from our
5500.
meeting.
I just printed it, I can go get it quick. Do one thing on student records, on the next board agenda, there is a resolution to adopt, I don't believe we're using ED1 anymore. They just released a new document for records retention requirements, and I don't believe it's
It was
ED1.
attached to our last update from
right,
John,
from Dave.
Dave, yeah.
Yeah, So we probably just need to put the right lingo in there. We highlighted that last spring. Let me get the regulation quick.
I thought that was in our last one. In our last one. I need to go in the binder. Yeah, 7100 reads, the Rome City School District Board of Education establishes the following policy and procedure relative to the availability of student records in order to provide parents and eligible students with access to student files and records, to retain the confidentiality of such records with respect to third parties, and to afford all other rights and privileges to parents and eligible students established by federal and state law. It will be the responsibility of the superintendent in conjunction with other school district officials to provide for the proper administration of student records in compliance with FERPA. That's it, which is literally already in here. So.
This regulation again only has references to other policies that they kind of cross-reference each other, 5500 and 8635, so
What was their exhibit 5500E1?
they don't have an exhibit one for 5500.
Hang on, I think it's attached.
They have 8635E, 5500 and 5500R.
That's really crazy. So I don't know what the E portion is.
Where do you see a reference to 5500E?
And the, right here in the middle.
Of the regulation?
Yep, of the one that you just printed and handed us. Under section 3.
They never sent one. Back in the.
So
spring.
5500E1, I believe, is the parent's bill of rights.
No, that's 8635E.
Or is it the form to ask for records? See, it says it here too.
That exhibit number, our exhibit number, those exhibit number.
There.
Parents have the right to inspect and review the complete contents of their child's education record. I think it's the form. I think 5500E, so we need 5500E1.
Or we need any exhibits associated with 5500. I'm looking at the policies they sent us in March,
Yep, I am too.
and I only see.
12 attachments, right? I don't see the,
I only see the 5.
I have 12 attachments, but mine are. These are all sexual harassment, the 8635.
Question is,
It is a question.
they sent that in June though.
No, this one, well, I just got this when I requested it, but this says March.
Yeah, so Jessica Goldstein in May 22nd think the 5500R, 8635, 8635 C, and 8635R.
Yep, and that's all that's attached to this one that just came from Mary Williams Noy on August 19th. And then today, they sent me the third and fourth installments. Did you find it somewhere else?
It's just basically a notice about students' right to
Review the records and the verdict.
Yep, and then E2, I think, is the form. E2. E2 is an objection to release of the record information designation. And that's the form for them to sign.
So we just have to email NISBA and ask for the exhibits associated with 5500.
Yeah, I can email her. Because I have these other questions too, so I'll just send her one message.
It's basically a notice to the parents of this file a complaint, that sort of thing, and how to do it, and the address.
Right.
The address.
So our point of contact, our policy person is Courtney Sanick. I'll forward her contact information to everybody. And she is going to get in touch with us regarding setting up a virtual meeting to talk to us about how to best use their service. So I guess we should decide, do we want that to be a work study item for a regular board meeting, or do we want that to be a policy meeting?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
So as I was scrolling through these emails looking for whatever attachments I could find, Courtney Sanick is our representative, and at the last meeting, we had said that we would want to maybe schedule like a virtual meeting with them to see how the policy portion, how to best utilize this. Do we want to do that during a policy meeting? Or do we want
Why
to?
don't we send an email to everybody asking who's interested, and then it could just be.
Okay.
Yeah,
Almost
or
size.
just like a nuts and bolts kind of how you
It's
use
gonna
the
be
service
super
then.
dry for
Um,
anybody who doesn't really care or hasn't been following along.
Right.
So I can't see.
I don't know. I guess if the piece of it that they could speak to is how to make sure that when every board member is receiving a policy, they understand it and feel comfortable approving it, then that would be worth the whole board participating in. If it's how do we do the best job possible and not get overwhelmed by trying to update our policies, and what's the best procedure, the procedural steps, that's really a committee thing. And there's nothing saying that we can't do both. I just want to make sure that if we're paying all this money for their service, that we are utilizing it to its best capacity.
Sounds like it might be more of a committee thing with an invitation for the rest of the board, that if this is something that you need help in or you want more information about, you should attend.
To Tanya's point, like if 9 of us want to do it, then cool, make it
Right.
a part of the general meeting or a work session or
Okay.
a retreat of some kind. But I don't know who isn't here right now is gonna walk up to that anyway. Because they're really excited. Yeah, I agree. Push it out to everybody, offer it. If Paul Haggerty wants to come, he should come.
So by Friday, we need to know, right before Friday's draft agenda goes out, to pass these, we need to know how we want to handle numbering, which we feel pretty confident that we're okay with the new numbers and keeping. Okay,
We gotta make that switch sometime.
right. How do exhibits work, and getting any exhibits that would pertain to passing these policies.
I got you.
Sure thing. Yes, and yes, but let's make sure we're not missing any too, so.
It's just-
Other than that, I feel like I've read this so many times and that we're going to, abolish 7100.
And that you're going to put the COVID thing on the agenda, correct?
Yeah, that's item 1. These were all item 2. Okay, so all these pages. Okay, do we have any other questions on items 1 through 5 on the agenda? Okay. So I know there was discussion at the last meeting about looking at our policies 60/30 and 60/50. I have not read them thoroughly. I'm not going to lie. I'm a
They're
little bit
pretty
busy.
short, if you wanna take 2 minutes.
I did ask for their recommended policies. The last one that I could find from NISBA is their. Peter, could you copy this for everyone? It's just a one pager, but when I looked this up on the NISBA site, these are the policies for all the policies. Since we've made it our goal to make sure that when we pass one policy, we touch the effective policies. When I looked up hiring, they had an article from an old onboard editor. It's just a one pager. So their policies pertaining to recruiting and hiring are 9240 called recruiting and hiring.
So on 60/30, Madam Second.
Yeah.
First paragraph in 60/30, I'm just a little
The
confused.
first paragraph?
Yeah.
Hang on, let me get it up.
So
Page 1 and 2. Towards the end.
Oh.
It's towards the end.
Anyway, so it says all appointments to
What-
instructional shall
I'm
be
sorry.
made by the board.
I'm sorry, John, where are you?
First paragraph in 60/30.
Okay.
Then it says, water board may accept or reject a nomination shall be valid only if made upon recommendation of the superintendent. So if he recommends somebody, then we can't reject it from what I'm reading here. Am I reading it right?
no, in the case of a rejection, it is the duty of the superintendent to present another nomination.
I'm just saying, it might be saying that the nomination itself is only valid if it's made by the superintendent, not whether it's accepted or rejected.
Okay. It kind of had to go in one way or the other, so. Okay.
Again, the way things are drafted.
Yeah.
Cause, it to have several.
I mean, that's what I thought it should read, but it didn't really totally read that way to me.
Could probably draft it a little bit more. actually.
Yeah, thanks.
So I did email this, but she didn't get a chance to get back to me about their sample policies for these. So I don't have access to those yet. And the only sample policy I could find from them was from 2009. So it's not,
Thank you.
but the language is pretty similar.
This is an old fashioned teacher in the class.
That's right.
Remember the ditto?
Remember when you used to get that as your, and you used to get to go, you.
Used to love handing out dittos.
No, I don't, Tanya.
Listen, your 40s are the most liberating 30 years of your life. I'm not going back. Worked too hard to get here. And life was simpler then.
I had overheads.
And the overheads, you had the
Anything clean the
mimeograph.
erasers?
Remember, I
No,
remember
I
that.
think erasers one.
Getting the erasers going down there
Put
on
out
the
the
grinder.
vacuum.
Oh, we used to have to
How
go out and get them
unhealthy
against
that
the brick
was.
wall.
Rubbing the eraser on the grinder, let all that
Yeah,
chalk dust get in your eyes and nose and not healthy. That had nothing on COVID though.
No.
That's right.
Not
So
helping you battle COVID today.
No.
Lee, to your point on this that I just gave you, item 5
Mhm.
would be the item that we want to look at.
Yeah.
So it's actually the conflict of interest policy.
Yeah.
And then the other, obviously, 0100 for equal opportunity. And theirs is 9240, but again, the only copy that I could find was from 2009, so I prefer to see a more updated. Do we have our own existing conflict of interest policy? I couldn't find anything in the RTA contract itself. Just such stimulating reading.
They're not gonna have anything in their contract about conflict of interest.
Well, I'd like to leave no stone unturned.
As far as they're concerned.
don't we have to recuse ourselves as
Yes,
board members?
Yes.
If we have a spouse?
You can't legally vote on anything involving, I believe, spouse, children, parent.
Right, so why wouldn't that apply to people who are doing anything? Like if we,
Well, I mean,
as board members.
I agree with what you're saying. I mean, I think the obvious, the savvy answer is that the buck supposedly stops with us, so we have to have it. Whereas checks and balances should exist above everybody below us. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I agree. I think we should adopt it. And there's no question in my mind. Like, go. I just don't know why you'd want to be in the position to have anybody go, improprieties. Why do you do that? So by enacting this as a district, that just makes good sense.
The code of ethics policy somewhat talks to it in that any individual, it's mostly for financial though, but any individual that has an interest in a matter coming before the board just needs to disclose that they are aware that they have an interest in the issue, so somewhat applies, but not directly saying that you can't be involved, just that you have to know that that
You have to disclose your.
you have to disclose that you
Your
have a
conflict.
possible interest involved in the matter. Most of the code of ethics is relative to finance though.
Wow, for our code of conduct being so big, our code of ethics is pretty thin.
Is there a larger outline of the conflict of interest?
Well, just from what's here, this,
You've got a board policy specific on employment of relatives of the Board of Education. Do you think that was implemented because somebody wasn't happy about something and getting hired? That's ridiculous.
That's usually how these things all get started.
That's why we're dealing with it now.
If it's something that can just be tacked into the code of ethics policy without having to put in a whole other policy, that would be, I'd be interested in that.
Made that on that joke on YouTube. It's good to send one. Otherwise, there's a delay.
two sets of notes from this.
YouTube, there's a delay.
Oh.
You gotta laugh. So,
Oh, gotcha.
don't worry.
All right.
That's gonna be incredibly tedious to send.
Albany City School District, who uses NISBA and board docs, has a specific conflict of interest policy. The Board of Education is committed to avoiding any situation in which the existence of simultaneous conflicting interests in any officer or employee may call into question the integrity of the management or operation of the district. Therefore, no person employed by the district shall hire, supervise, evaluate, promote, review, or discipline any other employee who is a member of the same family. Same family will be defined as parent, grandparent, guardian, spouse, brother, sister, child, in-law, grandchild, stepchild, step-parent, and step-sibling, or other member of family who resides in the household, to include domestic partners. In the event that marriage, family situation, promotion, or reorganization results in a situation not in compliance with this policy, reassignment or transfer will be effected in accordance with the applicable provisions of any collective bargaining agreement to correct the situation.
I'm not gonna say I don't like that.
So pretty black and white.
I like
Fine
that
with
it's
that.
spelled out, like
Mhm.
specific to the relation.
It references their code of ethics, ed law, general municipal law, labor law, and a case, Dykeman versus Simons from 1976.
Send it along.
Can I see it? Can I just send you the link? See if this works. Tell me if you guys can see it if I send it. Okay, I just sent you guys a link, see if you can see it. Came to your email. Can I just say one more time how much easier Board Docs is to use? I can't, I can't open any of our policies from our website on my work computer because it wants to go to Google Drive. It doesn't bring up a PDF anymore, it wants to go to Google Drive.
Yeah, it's all Google site at this point.
And my laptop there does not like it. And we're on hold with looking at their, policies pertaining to inclusiveness and equal opportunity, because NISBA's looking at that overall as part of all of their,
Part of a bigger review.
the whole topic of inclusion. So they're planning to put together a whole series of items to forward to us in the next month or so.
That information should be forwarded to interested parties as soon as possible. So-
And I would have forwarded this, it all came so quickly
I don't
today.
mean board internal, I mean external.
Dude, my email's super slow.
Did you guys get it? Did it open for you?
The link.
No.
I'm sorry, I'm still trying to send the link that I had regarding that exhibit.
We are the most tech-savvy bunch anywhere.
This is from the actual school.
Yeah, this is from their school. I just, like, you can't go on the NISBA site and look at their sample policies. You have to actually ask them for them. But I tried to find some people that use Board Docs and use their system, mostly for their numbering is where I started.
Yeah.
I think I actually found them last year after I went to the NISBA conference. I was so intrigued by Board Docs. I know this dude was as well, so.
So is there a potential conflict if we were to pass this going forward? Do we have,
Yeah.
or are we going to say starting on a certain, like?
Right, we would have to say if any of these are grandfathered, right?
You can't grandfather.
It'd be active the second the policy is on books.
You can't grandfather people, and that's the worst variety of
No, I know, but like if you're gonna change a policy
mid-year, you mean?
and it's going to have implications,
So do we have to put a timeline on how soon we would act
like
on?
how are we going to address current conflicts if there are any?
Right,
Would that not have to be a negotiation?
What's
with the
that?
unit?
if there are current conflicts when we pass this, how do we start?
I don't know of any current conflicts that we have.
Okay.
We got lots of family members working in the district throughout, but I don't think any of them are direct supervisory of any of the others.
That was my question.
I mean, the only, Tracy's wife works in the district, but she's in a different building than he is. You could see an issue, obviously, if Mike's daughter wants to coach, but we're aware of that already, so we have the ability to manage that. Who else going through,
Well, both my
Rob.
nieces work in the district, right, but they're not.
but they're teachers.
Separate.
Yeah. Rob's mother is a monitor, but he doesn't supervise her. I don't even know if she's gonna come back to work.
Okay, I thought she retired.
So then there's nothing that's going to need to be addressed as soon as we pass.
Not that I can think off the top of my head.
But is it something that needs to
I emailed
be,
it to you.
changed as far as the process goes for selecting applicants
No.
to interview? Going forward?
Or ducks.
It could, but so just using the previous example just using the previous scenario as an example, there's plenty of administrators that can review applications that, Mike doesn't have to be, Mike knows his daughter's applying, he doesn't need to be screening the resumes, even if there's 10 people doing it, and he's one of 10 that has no say, he doesn't need to be there, right? If there's 3 people, he doesn't need to be there. A different administrator can screen for that application. He's not the only, qualification. And quite honestly, it usually goes better when he's not there, because most athletic directors screening applications look for things more related to coaching expertise than actual classroom teaching, because they're trying to get double duty out of people, if you will. It makes it easier if you can use your phys ed staff for coaches, but
Was the PE teacher coordinator involved in that?
yes. Yeah. That was Renee Bledsoe.
So as it relates to this language that you sent to us, do you want to amend 60/30? Is that what we're talking to add that in?
Is it under recruiting and hiring, or is it a separate policy?
You want to create a policy on the other personnel?
Yes, that's where they have it. And in the meantime, I did ask for their updated, samples, because this, like I said, this one I found only from, the NISPA site.
I mean, this is really, pretty ideal. I mean, I would love to see what they have now, any different at all. We'll go from there. But, I mean, I don't wanna kick this around 10 times.
No, well, I had just used the search term in their, site of recruitment. Because that's really what we're trying to do, right, is,
You're talking about, not the conflict, but you're talking about
right.
sorry.
Well, we wanted to address both pieces, right? I mean, we were looking at hiring in general.
I mean, look, it's sort of the same thing with that as it is with the COVID stuff. I mean, we're in a very turning, there's so much consciousness around the topic that we're talking about. Not that we should be inactive or unwilling to do something right now, but I mean, let's talk to NISBA about what the timeline on them getting that done is. If that's a month from now, let's wait. If it's 6 months from now, let's not wait. Because in 6 months, we'll be dealing with something else. We won't be thinking about it the way we're thinking about it right now. But I mean, if they're doing some really comprehensive work, then they're more.
They said that they are definitely, that's, next to COVID, that's a top issue for them right now.
Cool.
I think it's worth waiting for, so that whatever we do change, if we make any change, that it corresponds with the latest.
Right.
And that we're not in a position where we have to again.
But if you
go
can
back.
ask them what they expect their time frame to be.
Sometimes it's more about managing expectations than anything. And if you can say, look, this is the deal, here's when it's coming, this is when we can expect to have this conversation. I think that helps. I think any kind of communication helps.
So, I mean, it looks like we got through most of the stuff on the agenda.
In an hour.
I'm wondering where the curriculum situation, Well, I was hoping to speak about. that tonight.
I had not had a chance to look at that, to be honest with you. Where's my, wait,
All right, well, I'd like to make a point to make sure that it's on the next agenda.
Yeah. what is it?
Curriculum,
Curriculum.
some specific policy that Brewer asked for.
Oh, this is not the one. I don't have my agenda from the other night that has my notes on it. I apologize. It's at home on my dining room table where I was
That's
lovingly reading it.
something that I hope that we can address, you know, either before or just
I
after.
I asked for a sample policy on that as well. So I'm hoping that we have some language from this, but, again, I don't want to pass any, as to Lee's point, I don't want to pass any new policy that might contradict what they might recommend if they're in the middle of weeding through our stuff. So I'm trying to make sure that anything that we do pass going forward.
I agree that we should probably be on the same page as them, but I think that might be the one exception, the one.
We've
policy
got an
that-
administrator lobbying for a very specific change to an
Right.
existing situation.
Yeah.
That is
And
a
it-
point to
And
that.
I guess the interesting part on that is, after that meeting, someone said that that was driven by the teachers, not the board. So that made
How's
me
that?
feel more conflicted.
I'm sorry. can you-
That the language of that policy was not written by. I did talk to Karen about it briefly, and she said, we didn't write that. That came to us from the teachers who were working on curriculum, not from the policy committee. So that was not language that they specifically drafted. So I don't know, I wasn't there, and
There
I'm
wasn't
not,
a single teacher involved in any of those discussions when we wrote that policy. That was done with Karen and I sitting at a
That's
table.
really all irrelevant anyway. We
Yeah,
have
let's make it-
administrators right now advocating for the
Yeah.
educational situation we face right now. Let's address right now, not 5 years ago. I'm informed and, motivated by what I understand about the past, but I'm happier to be ignorant of it if we are progressing forward.
Right.
So I think that, that's sort of hopefully tertiary to the conversation. at hand.
What I would say, and I don't know if Karen spoke with teachers outside of the meetings that her and I had, because when she was policy chair, she would meet with like the nursing coordinator at the time, we were working on a lot of nursing things. She could have done that. And or the revisions we made a few years ago were based on a policy that was done many years before that even. So it's possible that the first iteration of the policy came from teachers working on curriculum. I can't speak to that, but that's last.
I didn't have a lot of time to talk to her. I didn't
Yeah,
get a lot of
I just know that
clarification.
the
We were,
last iteration was, when she was the policy chair, policy meetings were really her and I sitting at a table together and fleshing out what it is that she wanted to have to go to the big group.
If that's gonna
The
be
big
on the
group just
agenda
kind of
for
met.
next time, because Karen's come up twice now, and I spoke with Karen between this meeting and the last meeting, and she was not thrilled with the way that she was characterized as being a participant in the previous iteration of how we did curriculum. So I would hope that she'll be present. If we can put it on the agenda for sure, I would like her, I don't wanna keep,
Well, yeah, you can't keep speaking for some.
yeah, I really don't want to do that, and frankly, I don't really think it matters how we got the last policy. We've just been told by our chief administrator on the subject that it's not working. So
Right, there's,
I do want to move forward.
not only that it's not working, we presented a way that it could work, and so,
Okay.
I don't know if there's any reason why it can't be on the next agenda.
Well, it definitely sounds like it warrants a larger group discussion.
Which I think it will get to that,
Yeah.
but we gotta take the first
Right.
steps here, right? So, and I want that to happen. And I'd like Chris to make that presentation again to the whole board as well. If that's
Oh,
possible.
was that, it was a policy meeting, wasn't it?
hang on, I'm gonna reply with this.
See, this is why
too.
it's important.
I don't mean to be lifting Albany's stuff, but theirs is a 4200, which I think the one we got from
Policies like
Whitesboro was a.
recipes, You can't plagiarize.
Regarding what?
No, you can blatantly put your eyes and encourage to do so.
Let me try this again.
And then, do we need to get something moving on the student situation?
I asked for that as well, but we will add that primarily to the next agenda.
What did you ask for?
Student member.
What about it though? You
I've
presented a sample
been
policy?
asking for a sample policy of whatever we're about to do.
What are we about to do?
Well, I think, yeah, I think that's the discussion that needs to be had, right?
We have it.
Well, no, we were down to two options, so we had to figure out which option we were gonna try to move forward, right? Or is that just something that you want to?
No, we talked about talking about it, which is crazy. At the last meeting, we talked about
Which meeting? are you
Getting
talking
it
about?
out to-
Policy meeting?
Oh,
or
right.
the
board
last
meeting?
general meeting.
Right.
We talked about getting the two options that this group,
Yes.
discussed last time. So
So do we have a better feeling of how we want this to read?
Yeah.
layman's terms.
Well, I think we had agreed on some terms, one of them being, any candidate, would have to carry
Yeah.
petitions. There's general age as to qualifications, right, senior.
Yeah, we have to. That's
There's
a.
gonna be up for petitioning because of COVID, because even the, this year's school board.
No,
No, we talked about.
I thought about this year, we were gonna do something different, where we're just
Right.
gonna allow the student association to choose,
He wasn't
then
here
next
last time.
year. Right, no, I know, but
Right.
I think we did even discuss it at the meeting, don't you?
Oh, I don't.
Um,
remember.
Yeah, we did it.
Going forward, it would be petition
Right.
based, if we're able to.
Okay.
I would say if the school board can collect petitions, that should be okay for the student.
Okay. In the absence of a sample policy, is there something kicking around there that you can maybe put together in terms of what we'd like to see in that policy?
We can throw one together. It'll be easier if it's a draft, obviously, but, and they gotta have standard.
I asked them
policy
for one.
anyway, so It can't be very common.
Who else has a student?
All in favor?
Why don't we try to lift one from there?
Just ask Jason.
Yeah, and Jason wrote something. Jason's still around?
Yeah, yes,
Yes, sir.
wife teaches
He can
at
bring someone
Stokes.
around his way.
That's right. We send a bus every year to pick up, take them to work, actually. And you give me the ambulance, they ride together.
Is that the last item?
Yeah, well, it wasn't even an item, it was just kind of a
Right,
discussion
right.
point.
It was the building of the next agenda. We're a step ahead of ourselves.
Yes.
Wait,
And I, listen, and I had
We're
been on
approaching
top of
you,
it
right?
until we decided
Let's pick it.
Thursday, we were having a meeting Monday.
Let's pick a date.
And because of all that came in those emails, I was like, I really didn't want to do an agenda until I got the emails. And of course, after the agenda was done, lo and behold, email. So do we want to do, we don't want to do the first day of school, do we? Does anybody have the strength for that? I
When's
don't,
the first day of school?
14th. Really, Joe? Have you been here at all?
You know,
Supposed to start the 8th,
my kids are.
maybe. Maybe. The 8th, as far as we all know. Parents are still waiting for a BOE letter. Yeah, but Rome's gotta get in on that part of transportation, so I don't know.
There's a lot of language around letting the
Could
students
do,
drive
Wednesday the
themselves and having
16th?
parent drop off.
And, the 16th,
Wednesday?
I can do that, I think. Hold on.
Sounds like. Yes.
5:30?
Mhm.
Excellent. Lee, did it talk about that? Cause like my friend at first was like, well, okay, I don't mind if my son drives, and then she was like, wait, winter. So she should be getting it then, if you got it
It's a
too.
full size.
Hey, Jane, have a good night.
Like a night, thank you.
Sir.
Did you learn anything?
Yeah.
Good. Anything more than that?
Well, live a Shirley.
Maybe.
We've become a lean, mean policymaking machine lately.
I haven't even had one.
You know, exit is a good motivator.
I'm also super proud because I got out of work, got at 4, got home, put dinner together and told my son to put it in the oven. So let's see how this turned out for me.
I ate today-old Indian takeaway and,
Well,
vegetarian
you
chicken
didn't
nuggets.
run out of here in the middle of the meeting sick, so I guess.
My kids wanted to turn over, so I was like, okay.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Goodbye, internet.
Enjoy. Yeah. Good night, Internet. Good night, John Boy.